Just a quick accountability video on what I read this week. I read the autobiography, I Am a Drug Lord, The Last Confession of a Real-Life Underworld Kingpin by Anonymous. It's a pretty cool book. I picked something pretty short. Well, it's not really short. It's 300 plus pages, I guess, but it's a pretty easy read. I blasted through this in 2 days. It gave me some time to do next week's book. It was published in 2021, so that's pretty cool. It's basically about the life of I need to preface this video by saying he changes some locations and names and these sorts of things, but the story is set in Ibiza and it's about a drug lord in Ibiza, basically. I'll read a few brief paragraphs. First one. I found myself thrust into the underworld because everything in life is connected. For that reason, you're going to read a fair chunk about my unusual childhood. That doesn't mean tales of child abuse and other horrors, because this is no misery memoir. But my early life was so bizarre that it helped shape my life in all sorts of ways. I was brought up in a laid-back hippie environment where I just went with the flow. The traditional elements of an upbringing were turned upside down from an early age, and that undoubtedly provided me with an inner calmness which enabled me to cope with pretty much anything. So, sort of an insight to how I got started. This is sort of discussing one of the inciting events that caused him to become a drug lord. Where are we? You're a lucky man, he said. You're being released without charge. I presumed the New Zealander had pulled a few strings to get me out. When I stepped into the bright sunshine from the Guardia civil headquarters later that morning, there were no familiar faces to greet me. Instead, a large, shiny black seat with tail fins and glistening chrome was parked up in front of the building. With two men in lightweight suits leaning against the front wing, they beckoned me over. The back door to the car swung open, and an older British voice told me to get in. When I peered into the car, the man sitting there immediately looked familiar. It was the skinny, middle-class looking man who wore wire-rimmed specs that made him look like a college professor whom I'd met at Soho book launch I'd attended with my uncle. We need to talk, he said, as I hesitated about getting into the seat until two men in lightweight suits appeared either side of me. That's how he starts getting tangled up. All right, this is, I'm trying not to spoil too much of this book, but I finally got to sleep at about 2 a.m, but was woken up less than 2 hours later by a phone call. I presumed it would be the Brit finally coming to his senses after arriving in Colombia, but it was La Princesa. I'm so sorry to hear about what happened, she said. Her voice was flat and distant. I didn't know what she was talking about. One of my friends in Colombia just called me with the news. What news? I asked. She said my boss had been traveling in a convoy of cartel vehicles north of Cali Airport when they were stopped by an army unit manning an isolated roadblock. The soldiers turned out to be narcos wearing stolen uniforms, and they shot the Brit and 3 other men in the convoy. They deliberately left their bodies on the roadside. The cartel thought your boss was an undercover DEA informant, she said. Those Colombians are so fucking paranoid. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, so you're running things now, right? It's pretty cool. If you like true crime, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, it's pretty interesting. Check it out.